So in our last video, we talked about what happens after you choose the right area and how that decision isn't the finish line. This conversation is the next layer of that. Because once buyers pick a neighborhood, there's a phrase that shows up a lot. We'll figure it out later. Later once we rent. Later once work settles in. Later once we see how Rochester really feels. And I get it. After a move, especially a relocation, it feels responsible to give yourself a little bit of breathing room. But here's what we've seen over and over again. In Rochester, we'll figure it out later often ends up being the most expensive part of the transition. I'm Kelly Domaille with Domaille Real Estate, and we help people relocate here every single week. And this shows up with physicians, executives, growing families, retirees, every budget, every life stage. Not because they're careless, but because they believe postponing the decision protects them. Sometimes it does, but often it doesn't. But before we go any further, if you're relocating to Rochester and these videos are helping you think more strategically, make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We focus on the decisions that happen after the obvious ones, because that's where the real impact is. Now let's unpack what figuring it out later usually looks like. Most buyers who say this aren't doing nothing. They're probably signing a lease. They're casually watching listings. They're telling themselves that they're keeping all their options open. But what's missing is intention. There's no defined timeline. There's no criteria refinement. There's no buying strategy developing in the background. And when there's no structure, three predictable things tend to happen. First, rent starts to sting because Rochester's rental market isn't sleepy. With healthcare, education, and corporate movement constantly bringing people in and out, demand stays pretty steady, so options tighten up quickly. And it's not unusual for rent here to land close to or even above what a mortgage payment would have been, except one builds ownership and equity and the other doesn't. Now second, the market keeps moving while you're just observing. Homes that once felt attainable shift in price or get sold, inventory rotates quietly, and we could buy anytime mindset slowly becomes, why didn't we act sooner? Now, time doesn't pause opportunity, it just reshuffles it. And third, the pressure comes back just less conveniently. A lease is ending, school enrollment deadlines approach, a winter commute becomes very real, and suddenly the relaxed timeline disappears. And now you're making a decision under constraint instead of clarity. And that's where regret usually shows up. Not because the area was wrong, but because the timing was intentional. Now you're making a decision under constraint instead of clarity, and that's where regret usually shows up. Not because the area was wrong, but because the timing wasn't intentional. If you're in that middle space right now, this is a good time for you to download our free Rochester Relocation Starter Kit. It helps you think through your next move after choosing an area so that you don't drift into a decision that you don't mean to make. Now let's be clear, renting first can absolutely be the right call, but it works best when it's strategic. The buyers who use that time well, they're studying commute patterns, they're living through winter intentionally, they're testing neighborhoods at different times of the day, and they're narrowing their must-haves with precision. They're not waiting for clarity to appear, they're building it. And the relocation buyers who navigate this best don't rush. They don't postpone indefinitely either. They decide what conditions need to be met before buying, and they understand their runway. They prepare for multiple scenarios so that when the right home shows up, they're ready. They're not scrambling. So here's the bottom line. After choosing an area, the risk isn't usually making the wrong neighborhood decision. It's assuming time alone will sort out all the rest of the details. Well, clarity doesn't arrive because the calendar turns. It comes from having a plan. So if you're relocating to Rochester and you want help creating that plan, one that keeps you flexible without putting you behind, that's exactly what we do. I'm Kelly Domaille with Domaille Real Estate. We live here, we work here, and we help people just like you relocate with clarity so confidence doesn't fade after the move. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.